me Jackie. I'm getting ready to eat before we start filming, okay? I'm going to eat dinner. I'll show you what I'm eating. You might be interested. A nice ginger salad and some ginger miso, if you know what that is. It's an Asian dish. And last but not least, we have Arizona sweet tea with lemon flavor. Yum. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel again. This is Jacqueline. My business is Exquisite Beauty. Today I'm going to talk to you not only about makeup. As you can see, I'm wearing a different hairstyle. This is my 1990s, well actually late 80s, 90s hairstyle, the one that I actually wore. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do a model inspired makeup from that era. Now, I know a little bit about that because back in the 80s and 90s, I actually was a working model with an agency. So I know about how I would do or have my makeup done for different fashion shows. So I'll be glad to show that to you today. And other than that, I'm also going to be talking about the rise of militia groups here in the U.S. who are anti-government, and particularly the groups that targeted the governors of the two states of Michigan and also Virginia. Now, I have a cousin who I love dearly who's afraid for me to talk about this because she feels that there are people involved who are very dangerous, and I live in the South. So I'm not going to express any personal opinions or views about the suspects or what's being done. I'm just going to simply cover things that are already found on the Associated Press, National Public Radio, Wikipedia, the New York Post, Washington Post, all over. So I'm not going to say anything that will express any personal opinions about what these individuals have done or what their ideology is. So here we go. We're going to start with the makeup, and I'll give you a little bit of background. So first off, as far as makeup goes, I'm going to start by putting on my serum and a cream that I will use as my primer, lip balm, and I already did an under eye serum earlier. So let me give you a little bit of background on what's going on here in the States if you're not familiar. Proceeding to 2020 United States elections, law enforcement officers, or officials I should say, and members of Congress and groups that are tracking extremism here in the U.S. have warned about the increasing threat potential from militias and far-right groups. Now, the Anti-Defamation League, hopefully you've heard of them, identified Michigan as a state where modern militia movement found its roots and where a number of militia groups remain active. However, John Lewis, who happens to be a research fellow at the program on extremism at George Washington University, said the group that's known as the Wolverine Watchmen, in which the suspects of the current kidnapping attempt or members of were off the radar. The reason they were off the radar is because they were so small, they weren't well known, so no one really knew to watch for them. Now, they are now, of course, getting ready to face the justice system for an alleged attempt against Governor Gretchen Whitmire. Now, for those of you who don't know who that is, that's the governor of Michigan. Now, she was the main target of the plot. Now, her political profile elevated since we've had this COVID-19 situation. That's what's caused her profile to elevate. Now, what happened is, in her particular case, she put some pretty strict mandates out there, or rules that offended a lot of far-right individuals. She did it as a way of preventing the spread of COVID-19. She put some severe lockdown mandates on people in the state, and she was widely praised for it. But of course, the members of these certain groups did have a problem with those measures that she put in order because they felt it was a little bit extreme. And so back in April and May, members of these groups protested on the state capitol, Michigan state capitol, that is. And back on April, I think it was April 17th, they actually tweeted, "Liberate Michigan." So, they felt that Michigan was needing liberating because of the strict mandates that were being placed against them. They felt it was unconstitutional, and they did take it to the legislation, they're feeling, about some of the mandates not being constitutional. And actually there was a unanimous ruling that declared that some of the things that Governor Whitmire did, she didn't really have the authority to do. And the reason she didn't is because she didn't have legislative approval. There was a law back in 1945 that said that for her to do some of the things that she did, she would need approval from the state legislator, which she did not seek. She just did it on her own, apparently. But then what happened is they said that there were some other rules that were passed in, I believe it was 1973 or 1974, that they said would give her the right to act independently. But anyway, it was a unanimous rule that some of the things that she did needed more approval than she got. She just did it. Now, of course, it's probably fair to say that you and myself were a little bit curious about the background of some of the guys who did the plot. Well, we're going to go into that a little bit right now. And by the way, I'm using this Milani right here. Conceal Perfect. This is the shade Amber. It's a little dark, but it's okay. It's going to blend in and it will work. Now, one of the suspects is named Joseph Morrison. Joseph Morrison is considered the leader of the Wolverine Watchmen. I'm just saying, I don't know him personally. I don't know who the leader is. He's just considered the leader. Now, his home is in a place called Munith, which is in Michigan. And he shares his home with Musico, was another suspect. And the home was used as a training site with alternating plans of paramilitary type training and also just support system, I guess, for other members of the group. They actually had a flag, their own flag, which is a variation of the United States flag. It's a Super Stay by Maybelline. Okay, so it was a variation of the United States flag that they're using, and the flag actually has red and white vertical stripes, alternating red and white stripes, and then it has a circle of stars in the words liberty or death. So it's a variation of the American flag, and that's what they have. That's what they use as their flag. Now, Joseph Morrison and his roommate, according to their neighbors, were considered to be disrespectful. They would have loud gatherings at night, and it was not uncommon for neighbors to hear gunfire during those meetings. Now, a little about Morrison. His online alias was Boogaloo Bunyan, and Morrison had served in the U.S. Marine Corps in 2015, and most recently in the 4th Marine logistics group in Battle Creek, Michigan. So this guy was a Marine. Yes. Now the next suspect is a guy named Adam Fox. Fox had been living in the basement of his former employer, who was a vacuum repair shop owner. So he was living in the basement of the vacuum repair shop. And the reason he was able to live there is because the shop owner had empathy for him because he was homeless and he had dogs. So the basement was used as a meeting place as well. So in addition to Morrison's house, Fox's basement was used as a meeting place. And Fox posted a YouTube video, which you may be able to find back in June, if you would like to see it, I guess. And he was criticizing the handling of the pandemic. And that was one of the motives for his plot, apparently. And according to his employer, the vacuum cleaner repair shop owner, he expressed a lot of anti-government type, anti-police sentiments. He didn't like politicians. He thought the Democrats were going to take away his guns as well. So he had a problem with all of that. And he had previously been a member of another militia group called the Michigan Home Guard. But he was kicked out because of his rage issues, because he threatened other members on social media. Okay, now the next person who they know about, and this is Water Street Eye Foundation right here. Okay, now that was Barry Croft, and Barry Croft has some media accounts, and they depicted him wearing a tricorn and a sweatshirt with the insignia associated with the Three Percenters. If you've ever heard of the Three Percenters, I don't know if you have. I have. I've known about them for years. And he expressed support for Russia and their investigation origins and opposition to the government's current immigration policy. So he was against the immigration policy. He had been in a little bit more trouble than some of the other members. He had been arrested repeatedly from like 1984 to 1996. He'd been arrested for assault and burglary. Okay, so I'm just reporting it. I'm not giving an opinion on it. He was convicted in 1997 for possessing a gun in the commission of a felony and spent 3 years in prison. In August 2019, Croft was pardoned for the conviction, as well as the prior assault and burglary charges by Delaware Governor John Carney. So, you know, it's pretty interesting to know that even though he had anti-government and anti-police sentiments, he was actually pardoned for alleged incidents by a governor. Yeah, wow, how ironic. Now, the next suspect is a man named Daniel Harris. And Harris has served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 2014 to about June 2019. And he was most recently at the Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, if you've heard of Camp Lejeune, if you know anything about the Marines. And that's in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Now, the group met at his home in Lake Orion on August 23rd to discuss the plot. So far, it seems everyone with a place to live, at one point, their home was a meeting place. The next person they know about is Brandon Caserta. And he's depicted wearing a Hawaiian-style shirt associated with the Boogaloo movement, if you know about that. And there was a TikTok video, and also a video on Facebook, where he praised Kyle Rittenhouse, who was a civilian who shot and killed 2 protesters during an unrest situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So he was also a COVID-19 denier, which I don't know if you know of COVID-19 deniers, but I've met quite a few of them, and he was a denier as well. And he believed that the like investigations into President Trump's background constituted an uprising. He called President Trump a tyrant, too. So, I don't know, I guess that's back and forth. In a way, he criticized Trump. Some of the members supported Trump, but most of them are generally against government and against both parties and against politicians. But he actually, at first, before COVID-19, his Facebook page and his social media posts were full of like motivational quotes, podcasts, selfies, pretty harmless things. But following the lockdown, he began liking posts about conspiracy theories regarding Bill Gates, as well as memes about hog-tying police officers. The next suspect is Pete Musico, and he was very active on YouTube, actually. And he posted video blogs against taxes and gun control and so-called deep state. So he was one of the people who did more conspiracy theory type videos. Now, he posted a video in 2019, and it was entitled Gretchen Whitmire Interview, and depicted him rallying against her policies around automobile ownership. And Musico was also active on Gab, where he promoted the unfounded claim that there is an ongoing campaign to kill white people in South Africa. He also followed the accounts of the Proud Boys, organizer Joe Biggs, and InfoWars personality Owen Schroyer. Yeah. And then on Twitter, he expressed support for Trump and conspiracy theories regarding Bill and Hillary Clinton, as well as the high presence of mercury in vaccines. Yeah. And second to last, we're going to talk about the twins who were part of the theory or part of this plan as well. The twins would be Michael and William Null, N-U-L-L. Now, they're twin brothers, and they were also former members of another militia group called the Michigan Liberty Militia. They were photographed at a protest held in Michigan for liberty. And it was held by Michigan United for Liberty, and that was another like right-wing protest group that protested against Whitmire's COVID-19 policies. Seems a lot of people in Michigan had a problem with Whitmire's COVID-19 policies. Okay, now they also were at Black Lives Matter rallies, so they would go to those as well. They went to the Black Lives Matter rally in Grand Rapids and Flint. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they would want to go to the Black Lives Matter rally, but they were there. Okay, and they protested against President Trump's executive order 13769, I believe, and that was held by the Equality Caucus of Genesee County in Flint. So they were that protest against that. And he and members of the Michigan Liberty Militia were counter-protesting while wearing military fatigues. And they were carrying their firearms and waving the Gadsden flag. That's that flag I told you about earlier. William also allegedly made threats against protesters on Facebook. And lastly, we have Paul Ballard. Now, Paul Ballard, actually second to last, and Paul Ballard was arrested in Columbia, South Carolina. So here we have someone who actually was arrested in the South. Apparently, he had been evicted from his apartment or wherever he lived. And he moved from Milford over the summer after an eviction. Yeah. Now, and by the way, the last three products that I've used will be this LA Girl Luminous Glow, this Flower Concealer, and now I'm putting on the Flower Light Illusion makeup here that you see. Now, Paul Ballard, as I was mentioning, was arrested in Columbia, South Carolina. He was described as a very angry person. He was allegedly responsible for designing the tactical training exercises used by the Wolverine Watchmen. And it was his former neighbor in Milford who said that he was a very angry person, and he threatened her, she was a her, with a gun after a run-in with him. According to Ballar's father, he trained for the U.S. Army at Fort Jackson for a whole year before being discharged in 2019 with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And then we have Brian Higgins. He's a resident of Wisconsin. In fact, he lived in Dells, Wisconsin. Now, he was arrested on October 15th, so very recently. Now, he's alleged to have provided his night vision goggles and dash cam to help conduct surveillance on Whitmire's home. You know, this is her vacation home. Now, the FBI became familiar with the group because they started monitoring them on social media. Yes, you do get monitored on Facebook, etc., when you start expressing any kind of violent opinions or opinions that may hurt someone. And they started asking for police officers' personal addresses, voicing a lot of animosity toward the police and different government officials. And the FBI started monitoring them. And the militia, of course, was seeking as much information as possible on the individuals, such as police officers. And they began voicing threats online or writing about threats. And so they were being monitored by the FBI because of that. And that was according to the criminal complaint. They were being infiltrated by people, at least around June of this year. They were being infiltrated, and the information was being brought back to the FBI's attention. Now, the group met in Dublin, Ohio, back around June 6th. Yes, it was on June 6th. They actually met, and that's when they started formulating their plan to kidnap Whitmire, the governor. At the Dublin, Ohio meeting, they said that the people in the government are tyrants and that they were going against the U.S. Constitution. And at the Ohio meeting, Fox, who is one of the suspects in this situation, contacted the militia, and he was already being investigated by the FBI, little to his knowledge. And the militia held a field training exercise. They didn't know there were informants there as well. So the informants were able to detail what happened at the Ohio meeting. And he requested at the meeting 200 men to attack the Michigan State Capitol in order to take Whitmire and others as hostages and hold a trial for them, accusing her of treason. During the meeting and during this particular call, I guess it was a group call, he reportedly said to the source, this would be the informant, that the operation had to occur prior to the 2020 elections. So, during the Second Amendment event at the state capitol, Fox was recorded by a confidential source attempting to recruit militia group members. You know, he said he needed 200 men to attack the state capitol. Now, he was recruiting individuals for a meeting that was subsequently held in Grand Rapids, where he led the people there through a trapdoor. And of course, there were informants there as well. So that's why we know about that meeting through the trapdoor. Or I should say they do, because I wasn't there and I'm not involved. And they have audio from that meeting. So pretty incriminating, unfortunately, for them. Now, Fox also had a live session on Facebook, and that was back on June 25th. And it was a video that was captured by the FBI, and on there he was criticizing the government too, and saying, I don't know, boys, we have to do something. So that's known as well. Now, the next meeting was actually held in Michigan as well. I think that one was held in a place called Munith, Michigan. And that was on June the 28th. And that is where Fox, his girlfriend, a guy named Garvin, a guy named Frank, which we talked about Frank's, and we talked about Caserta, he was there, and a confidential source talked about the exercises that they would be doing. And they were told to leave if they felt uncomfortable with attacking the government and participating in the kidnapping. So they were told that if you don't feel comfortable with it, you can leave. And so later on, according to the confidential source, they had training for weapons and exercises in Cambria, Wisconsin, between July 10th and 12th, with Croft, Garvin, and other militia members attempting to take an improvised explosive device. It's called a IED on July 11th. Through the devices, they plan to get things done toward the attack, but the devices were defective. And Franks also bought a rifle equipped with a silencer, firing it at the time. Now, at a second meeting, it was held on July 18th. Audio was collected where they talked about attacking Whitmire at her vacation home. Now, Miss Whitmire's vacation home was on Birch Lake, which is in Elk Rapids, Michigan. Yeah. So they wanted to attack her there at the vacation home. That was the plan. And that was recorded on a device by the source, the anonymous source. And Fox also said that he had researched the governor's office and made sure that the governor would not be present there. He wanted to make sure that she was where he wanted her to be for the attack, which was her vacation home. So they got a lot of recorded information on Fox talking about it and saying he just didn't effing care anymore. And different explosive language about how he felt about what he needed to do and who he felt needed to be annihilated. So, of course, for him, that included the governor. Now, for the invited participants at Fox's meeting that he held at his Grand Rapids location back on July the 27th, he even started detailing plans about where Fox would be, monitoring where she would be at different times, and making sure that she would, as I mentioned before, be at the vacation home when they planned the attempt. Participants also met in Munith, the source says. This is a Santee pencil, actually concealer stick. And they met for training August 9th in Munith. And then they communicated via phones and chats, planning the kidnapping attempt. At that meeting, they discussed how they would just go up to her door, get one of the participants to go up to her door and knock on it, and they said just cap her. At that point, they didn't care. And they apparently wanted someone to just take her out, just cap her right then. Then they had another meeting on August the 18th where at that particular meeting, they just discussed exactly where her vacation home was. Then on August 25th, participants met at Harris's home during a secretly recorded conversation. They were able to find out more about the plot. At that time, they were still planning the kidnapping attempt. And they allegedly talked about the vacation home. They stayed together there to discuss them. They had some night vision goggles. They talked about that, and a helmet. And of course, the man, Mr. Harris, told the other members that he had spent $4,000 on the night vision equipment and the helmet. They discussed blowing up a bridge near the vacation home because there was only 20 or 30 of them, and they thought they might need a way to distract the police. So it seems that they really did put a lot of time into planning this over many weeks, even down to small details. The good thing in all of this is Flower Beauty. It's a cream blush for Miss Whitmire, and this is all made. This is called Made in Jelly. These are creams. Remember, I always do a cream and then a powder, followed by the KVD Crush and Blush. The good thing about their plotting is that they are now installing an electronic fence around the governor's mansion for extra security measures. So future governors, as I said, and Ms. Whitmire currently, will be a little bit more protected. Now, on September 13th, Frost, one of the suspects, suggested that they try to kidnap the governor on that very night. Also on that night, they drove a boat across the lake to the governor's house so they could do surveillance on her house. Now, this was discussed and recorded on that day, September 13th. And by the way, this was at Garvin's house. And at that time, they decided that this would be strictly a kidnapping. Now, also at that time, they discussed going for the following day as a day to go on with the kidnapping attempt. But they didn't do it that day for whatever reason. So by October the 2nd, they actually Mr. Franks told an undercover informant agent that he had gotten an 800,000 watt taser that would be used during the kidnapping. Now, on October 2nd, Caserta had met with a undercover agent in an attempt to purchase explosives. That was on October the 7th. And that was something that came out of all of this too. They tried to purchase explosives. Now, for whatever reason, even though they planned it, Caserta was not able to show up because of work obligations, fortunately. Mr. Croft also did not attend the meeting because he returned to work prior to the meeting. The members involved were arrested that very night, October the 7th, and charges were filed against them the very next day. Now, on October 13th, FBI agent testified that the conspirators considered the leaving Whitmire on the boat in the middle of Lake Michigan and disabling its motor. They had also considered that. And the group had discussed at earlier stages kidnapping Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who had also imposed some pretty strict lockdown orders in response to COVID-19. So yes, they actually planned it against more than one governor. This is a beautiful color, and this is Heart Candy Glitteroxy, which I'm about to put on my lips. The Michigan Attorney General, her name is Dana Nessel, charged 7 other suspects with these crimes. This is CoverGirl. It's called Cunt Crusher. They were charged with providing material support, terrorist acts, firearm crimes, and gang membership. So a whole slew of crimes. And 2 of the suspects had bond set at $10 million, with preliminary examination scheduled for October the 21st. So this is coming up very shortly. On October the 15th, an 8th suspect from Wisconsin was charged with material support and acts of terrorism, which each carry 20-year sentences. So Nessel charged them. And with this latest arrest, Nessel filed felony charges in relation to the case. Governor Whitmire spoke out during a live stream, and she thanked the police and the FBI and all the agencies that were involved in thwarting the plot. And here you have it, folks. A genuine late 80s, early 90s modeling look done by someone who was actually a working model with the agency during that time period. I hope you enjoyed my video. Please consider subscribing and sharing and press that notifications bell. I would love to know your thoughts, opinions, comments on what we talked about today. It will be interesting to me. Just to let you know, I plan on covering not just murder stories, but as I mentioned, crime, corruption, conspiracies, and that was kind of all included today. Hi, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. It is going to be about what is going on with that kidnapping attempt in Michigan and also Virginia. We're going to discuss that. I hope you enjoy it. This is today's look. It's my retro look, which is how I wore my makeup when I was a working model back in the 1990s.